Okay, so this is a demonstration of how to do some turn two kills with Amulet. I'm using a pretty stock Amulet list. I'll put it in the description of the video if you're curious about what exact cards I'm running. I do want to note that there is one card that really simplifies the turn two kill process, and it's Keswick Wolf Run. It's kind of training wheels, but it's like training wheels that are so good that it's almost worth running. And by that I mean Keswick Wolf Run enables a turn two kill on an opponent that's at 20 life that does not involve setting up an analyst loop. So it's immune to graveyard hate. The big downside of Keswick Wolf Run is that it is a colorless source. So it is going to make it less reliable to cast Green Sun Zenith on curve. It's going to make it less reliable to cast Arboreal Grazer on curve, so on and so forth. All of the turn two amulet lines, all of the turn two kill lines, you need two amulets on turn two. So the early turn sequencing is pretty straightforward. You play an untapped mana source. I'm just going to use my whole deck as my hand here. You play an amulet, and then turn two, you go ahead and you tap that same land for a second amulet. So when you go off, you're going to be starting from this point always on turn two. That is, I mean, there's obviously more lines in the deck, but if you're trying to kill someone on turn two, this is your starting point. And this could be colorless. It doesn't need to be a forest. From here, you have two options. The first is Lotus Field, which will very cleanly make 6 mana. So 3, 6, sack these. And remember, it's tapped. So when you start counting how much mana you need, you've already tapped this to cast your second amulet. The other option is to use something like a bounce land, which will make 4 mana. And then you can play Arboreal Grazer, which takes you to 3 in your pool, go up to 7. It's time for whatever you want. You don't need a bounce land. You could use some weird combination of lands. So Crumbling Vestige with 2 amulets is 3 mana. It floats 1 and then it untaps twice. So then you can go to 2 mana in your pool and do a bounce land or something like that. There's several ways to get to 6 mana. Their left is an exercise for the reader. Two that are important to note are Spelunking and where is it? My Singular Dryad. Where is it? It's on the top of my deck. These do not work for getting 6 mana on turn two. The reason being, you make 4 mana, you go to 1 mana, you play this, you're at 5. So you're 1 short. And it's the same with Spelunking. It's a 3 mana investment to generate 1 mana. Whereas a Grazer is a 1 mana investment to generate 3 mana. So you flip it, right? Notably, when you do the bounce land thing with Grazer, I said you make 7 mana. So 4, pay 3, make 4 more is 7. This means the Grazer does not need to be in your hand. You can Green Sun for it with that extra mana, and you'll still get to 6. And this is one of the reasons that I really like Green Sun as a main deck card in Amulet. Okay, let's get into the kills. I'll do the Keswick Wolf Run one first because it's simpler. But basically, you make 6 mana, you cast a Titan. With that Titan, you're going to get Mirror Pool and a bounce land. They untap, you float blue, green, colorless. They untap again, you float blue, green. So your pool is blue, blue, green, green, colorless, which is enough to activate Mirror Pool, making a copy of your Titan. I have a copy token in my box. Make a copy of a token. You have to bounce a land, so this would go back to my hand. The copy enters. You can do one of two things. You could get Echoing Deeps and a bounce land. Copy Mirror Pool, do the same thing, make another copy. Then you have 3 Titans to work with. Or you can kill with just 2. You don't need to do the third Mirror Pool. It's a little bit more, but it's nice to demoralize your opponent whenever you can when you're playing Amulet. because people think you're really scary, you might as well prove them right. To kill with just these two Titans, you get your haste land, the Hunger Battlements, and a red source. I'm just going to use Valakut. Haste this, haste this. This attack is only for 12. The way that you get it to 20 is by looking for 4 lands that produce a total of 8 mana. So you can give one of your Titans +8, +0, and trample with Keswick Wolfrun. And you have 4 lands to work with, so there's obviously very many permutations to get to 8 mana 8 mana plus a green and a red. So Gruul Turf is obviously the easiest way to do this, because that makes green red, and then it makes another green red. So that's 2 mana towards RX. 4 more mana towards RX is 6. And then you can just get, I don't know, like a hedge maze and a forest or something, and you're already attacking for more than 20. If you don't have access to Gruul Turf for some reason, you could do 2 Crumbling Vestiges with the first Titan. So that makes green red and then 4 colorless mana. Keswick Wolfrun makes another colorless mana, so you can tap it. So that's 5 colorless plus green red. And then from there, you can do Lotus Field, and that will put you over X equals 10 or X equals 8. You could also do like a Crumbling Vestige and a Simic Growth Chamber, which will net you slightly more mana, because the Simic makes 4 mana with double Amulet, and the Vestige only makes 3 mana. Pretty simple. Attack your opponent to death for 20 with Keswick Wolfrun. No graveyard required. There was the Echoing Deeps and Mirror Pool thing, but like I said, you don't need to do that. It's overkill. So literally no graveyard required for that line. Let's say you're not playing Keswick Wolfrun, like I'm not. I just have this in my sideboard for demonstration purposes, but it's not actually in my list right now. Let's set up our board state to start. I said you're always starting from here. We do our Grazer thing. Bounce land, Grazer, bounce land, 7 mana. Cast a Titan. So even though the way to kill your opponent on turn 2 without Keswick Wolfrun is Aftermath Analyst, you start with a Titan. With this Titan, you do the Miracle thing, but with one slight wrinkle. You are going to get Mirror Pool and Lotus Field. The reason for this is that Lotus Field generates 6 mana instead of 4 when you tap it twice. Let me have a pen and paper here, actually, and I'll write down the floating mana we have after each step of this to give you an idea of what we're working with. I think this will be visible on my camera. Okay, so Lotus Field makes 6 green mana plus a colorless from the Mirror Pool is 7. -5 to activate the Mirror Pool is green, green floating. So in the first step, we have 2 mana floating. Untap, green, 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 colorless, untap, green, 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 activate Copy Titan. You have the sacrifice trigger on the stack. So when this Titan comes in, you still have to sack 2 lands. So use a die or something to remember that. This is in your graveyard because you made a token copy, which is crucial. So when this copy of Titan comes in, you have 2 green mana in your pool. You're going to do the Echoing Deeps thing this time. It is necessary now. Echoing Deeps. And we're going to do another Lotus Field, or because you haven't sacrificed this one yet, you can do a Vesuva. But I would just go with a Lotus Field for simplicity. Echoing Deeps copies Mirror Pool. We do the same thing. And because we're doing the exact same thing, make a copy of Titan, we are going to be netting 2 mana again. So our pool is now green, 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 green. This Titan comes in. We get to go look for 2 more lands. And now we're going to start trying to find that analyst. This is a classic line for any Titan veterans, Simic Growth Chamber and Teleria West. This makes blue, blue, green for each amulet you have. Blue, blue, green, blue, blue, green. and then we bounce a land. I'm going to bounce the Teleria West to my hand, so I can transmute for a Summoner's Pact, and I can use that Summoner's Pact to find my Aftermath Analyst. Because you transmute as a sorcery speed, this means you need to resolve your sacrifice triggers. You have to sacrifice 4 lands. This is in the graveyard because you made a token copy of Titan. So you have no lands in play when this happens. The transmute, so Simic Growth Chamber and Teleria West generates blue, blue, green, blue, blue, green. Blue, blue, green, blue, blue, green, but you need to transmute. So your pool is this plus this. You're going to have 5 green, 2 blue in your pool when you transmute and when you cast your Summoner's Pact. Cast your Analyst, go to 4 green, 1 blue. It enters and you mill 3 cards. Let's say for, I guess, worst case scenario, you mill 3 non-lands. So let's say we mill 3, and we'll mill 3 creatures so that it doesn't even help with Delirium. We're going to mill Arboreal Grazer, Cultivator Colossus, and Arboreal Grazer. This is worst case scenario. Usually you're going to mill something that helps you out a little bit. So Analyst trigger resolves. Or how about this? We get solituded with the Analyst trigger on the stack. So we cannot look at those cards. They can't help us when we activate our Analyst. We get solituded and we have to activate our Analyst in response. So we're going to go to a single green mana floating. But soon we're going to have a lot more than a single green because we are returning 2 Lotus Fields, a Simic Growth Chamber, a Forest, a Mirror Pool, and an Echoing Deeps. And Echoing Deeps sees all of these cards in the graveyard, so you have your pick of the litter in terms of what you want to be copying with this. And at this point, Analyst would be in our graveyard. The Solitude will fizzle because there's no more valid target. To do the math, this is, let's say, Echoing Deeps copies Forest. So we have a minimum of 2, 4, plus 6 is 10, plus 6 is 16, plus 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21, because we want to activate this. We have 21 mana to work with. And it's usually at this point that I tell my opponent I have virtually infinite mana, because that's the truth. What you can do here is so usually what I would do is make these both Mirror Pool. If these are both Mirror Pool, what you can do is with the sack triggers on the stack, you can crack them and you can go get, Summoner's Pact would be in your graveyard at this point also. That's actually quite important because we need it for Delirium, because we pacted for that Analyst. So we're going to Mirror Pool 2 things. They're both going to be Titans. With these Titans, we are going to get, let's get Hedge Maze. That makes things easier for reasons I will explain in a second. Shifting Woodland, that's our next combo piece. We need Urza's Saga for Delirium. This is an enchantment, so we'll have creature, instant land enchantment, and we're going to sack it with Lotus Field. And we can get Beseiju, so we have something nice to bounce with our Simic Growth Chamber. Those triggers are still on the stack. Okay, let's resolve all of our ETBs. We float virtually infinite mana. We get to Surveil. Without looking at, I'll just put it in the graveyard. And when you start demonstrating your loop, you can return Hedge Maze, and that is going to show your opponent that you can put your whole deck in your graveyard and have access to everything. So any permanent in your deck, you can access with Shifting Woodland, and any land in your deck, you can access with Analyst. We're going to sack 4 lands. Make sure you always sack your Lotus Fields because you want them to recur as a source of mana. Be careful about sacrificing your bounce land, because if you don't have a land you want to bounce, you could loop yourself out of the combo. You could bounce a land that you need to have in play for the combo to work. In this case, I want to bounce Beseiju, so I'm going to sacrifice the Simic Growth Chamber. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 lands. We have Delirium. And we have a billion mana floating, so we can make a copy of Analyst and do the loop again. And I actually think I forgot a Titan trigger. I can't remember. I feel like there's another Titan trigger in here. But at this point, you have infinite Titans, right? Because every time this comes back, you have the mana to make another copy of Titan. Go get whatever the hell lands you want, and you can keep doing the Analyst loop here, because Analyst is making infinite mana if you are sacrificing more than 8 mana worth of lands. So if you have double Amulet, 2 Lotus Fields is more than enough. You can do this with a single Lotus Field, um, too, right? Because even with 2 Amulets, if you just have like a colorless land and a Lotus Field, this is 8 mana, so this is mana neutral. And you can tap the Shifting Woodland for mana when it comes back, so that's 9 mana. You would have infinite green. You'd actually have infinite of any color because of Lotus Field. The Shifting Woodland Delirium activation, tapping is not part of the cost. Tapping is also not part of the cost of the Aftermath Analyst, which means you are free to use this mana as you see fit. Anyways, there are a couple of different ways to win from here. Because we have Infinite Titans, we can also tutor infinite lands out of our deck. You can go get Hanra Battlements, and you can sacrifice it as part of your Analyst loop to keep untapping it. Then you haste your Infinite Titans and attack them. Or you can get another bounce land and do the Nadu kill, which is repeatedly bouncing Boseiju to your hand along with Odawara. And you can answer all of their non-basic lands and all of their non-land permanents using Odawara and Boseiju. And that's like a Nadu kill. And then you pass with just like a billion Titans. That's useful if the Hanrei Battlements is in your hand or something like that. You can do the Nadu backup. Just make sure that when you end the loop, you have as many lands in play as possible so that you can pay for your Summoner's Pact trigger. Don't forget about that. Okay, that's how you turn 2 with Amulet.